TPR.
Roundup number 8.
Oh, really? He said it. So if it's not correct, I have no responsibility. And मैं
you know
correct
how to
करूँगा
blame,
भी नहीं.
but
It
मेरी तो
is.
responsibility है ही नहीं ना. So
Acha. It is indeed surprisingly Roundup number 8 and the September Hamnawa playlist issue.
you know what I found is that people are always surprised by my competence. And
by what?
Yeah, by my competence. So this case, it is surprisingly number 8.
No, I mean, I'm surprised you made the effort to check, or did you just remember?
I remember it was 6, the first one we did.
Chalo. Okay, yeah. Because like if I'm putting these together, याद तो होना चाहिए ना. हो रहे हैं बस.
With the I am doing way less TPR recordings than you are, and with the amount of recordings you are doing, that you forget the numbering is only natural.
Yeah, I accept this compliment if it is a compliment. So khair, there's a new Hamnawa playlist out. This one, many songs, so many songs. What happened?
So many songs. I don't know if I'm listening to more songs or people are releasing more songs. I think it's a combination of both. There are 2 blackout periods in the Pakistani music release calendar. Ramzan has less releases and Muharram has less releases. So at the end of Muharram, you get a bigger rush. Eid is the biggest rush probably. So I think we got some rush of music. And then there's some stuff in there that's actually a little bit old. Older releases that have only just made it to the playlist now. So that's just me. You're welcome.
Okay. and the last time we spoke about Shumaila so much that I think now she has like 2 further appearances on this month's playlist.
So this one is interesting. It always is tough for me to figure out how to do this when people release albums. Then my process is gone. The reason for that, especially the album is good. It's artists who are releasing good albums.
Inconsiderate.
Because then I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So the issue is, I think it's very much a singles driven market, which, everybody's been saying for 10, 15 years. The issue now is from a curatorial standpoint, if your job is to curate songs, because I can't curate albums because there aren't as many artists putting out albums that I can actually just say, okay, like listen to this album. Like if I started reviewing albums right now, it would not be helpful. That is not how people are consuming music. And that is not how, enough artists are putting music out. So what I need to do then is when people put out albums is that I have to pick out the songs that I like and then find some way of, processing that music in the same time that I'm putting out or processing singles that come out. So if in August, an artist puts out 1 album, meanwhile, another artist put out a single each, am I listening to the album and processing it all in one go? And then is the sort of 10 best songs that I'm giving you all from the album, or do I space it out? And so the way that I normally do it is that I start listening to the album, and if an album is meant to be heard as an album, then we, it makes sense to slowly pick out songs that stand out over time. And so for me, an album is supposed to last a little bit longer than a single. And so Shumaila's album means that 2 or 3 more songs have shown up on this playlist. Some might show up in the next one. But when Shamoon put out his album, it was the same way. Manu put out his album. It was
I was going to ask,
way, but Manu was also.
Has this happened before?
It has happened before. Most artists now, basically what they do is that they release singles, and then the last single they compile the entire thing to the album. And so they don't release albums. They use the albums as a retrospective organizational tool,
like a book,
which feels like a more natural way of doing these things. The only problem then is that then you have often like 2 copies of the same song. Or if you look at like Joke's album on Spotify, it's not an album at all, so you can't listen to it. So then you have to listen to some other Indian person's playlist who has compiled them into an album. I think he's Indian. I may have made that up, but it's a podcast, so I can say non-factual things.
Yes, you have to.
It's the great thing about the verbal medium. So it's a challenge, but I think that's why you have so many of her songs on.
Okay. I like how we're blaming. At the end of the day, we're almost like blaming Shumaila for doing this, for inconveniencing. Zeerak's curation.
Yes, my biggest enemies are good artists, which actually some of my critics would say that is true and not a joke. But
do you have if you have people reaching out for criticism, but so this album, I went through it too late. This has been a theme of mine recently. Not recently, I guess, my whole life, that I've gone through things very late, last moment. But I went through this, and some songs were really stood out, and we'll talk about them. The first one, the song that I could only bring myself to listen to once, was Iqbal. I heard the song and I was like, oh, what a fun, amusing rap song about school. And then bache bade ho gaye, and then there was a teacher, and then there's murder, and then there's like stories of abuse, and I'm like, what is happening? What is happening in the song?
So after we talked about this, I went and watched the video. You seen the video?
There's a video? No.
Yes. Okay. So the video is very literal.
Okay.
And it makes the song, I had a hard time keeping track of the story when listening to the song.
Right.
But when you see the video, then you're like, oh, all of this makes so much more sense. Okay. So much more sense in the sense that you know what's happening.
Right.
But the progression is still just as stark.
Right.
You can follow each of the events, but the events escalate pretty quickly. Yeah. It's a 3-minute kid goes to school down to murder conspiracy driven by deep familial issues.
Trauma.
It's bad.
But also great.
Out pretty quickly. Here's why it's great. I think it's great because what other genre of music is giving you like storytelling like this?
Yeah.
In a kind of listenable. We talk about critics. I'll talk about critics. So I have a very friendly commenter. He's actually not a critic. A very friendly commenter, but I think usually I get posts like, we talked about this, like, is Hamnawa a hip hop page now? What is happening? Right. And I think there is a general trend that is not just linked to me, but rather, one, is this music good on a global scale? There's a lot of hip hop being produced in Pakistan, but is it empirically good?
Yeah.
And that's one question. And I have made the exaggerated claim, may not be exaggerated, but I made the claim last week that this is probably like the best era of Pakistani music to want to be in. And I think that is a controversial claim to make, especially for people our age.
Right.
And so I just want to pull that out a little bit and discuss it. First, what are your thoughts on these claims?
No, I agree. I would agree because even if I don't see the evidence in the music itself, just because I haven't listened to a lot of songs, I think just from a environmental and system access based level, it would make sense if this was right. Fewest gatekeepers, most access, most level of inspirations coming in, most democratized process ever. So it would make sense.
Yeah. Lowest bar of quality is quite high.
Yeah.
It's like the home production is actually not far off from getting access to studios. The democratized not just in the sense of can you upload it to YouTube, but democratized also in the sense of your barrier to actually producing high studio quality international level music is a laptop. When it used to be a studio like Mikal Hassan studio.
I couldn't remember the name of his studio in time, but
Digital Fidelity Studios, which unfortunately went through and so there's a campaign which people should support if they can.
Yes.
But so that barrier to entry is much lower. So that's really good. I actually think the number of artists, so I think you and I mentioned that I am tracking like 300 artists that are roughly 300 that are active now. And
borderline,
I don't remember a time. Right. I don't remember borderline. I like to use the term borderline. I find that charitable.
We're friends.
I don't remember another time when there were
I don't think
cumulatively
like mainstream, if we think about it, I don't think we can get to like 200 even before this era.
if you go to like the Park Music archive, okay, let me double check my claims live, and we will find out if
What
if
is
this
Park
is correct.
Music Archives?
Parkmusic.net.
Oh,
this
right.
is from the era of you may be familiar with apniisp.com.
Yeah, and Park
So
Media Revolution.
Park Music, Park Media Revolution. The Parkmusic.net was a comparative website. So they had two archives. One was called Mainstream and one was called Underground. Okay. So Underground had how many artists? Let's see. Okay, not bad. It's like 770 underground artists. That's crazy. Okay, not bad. So maybe my claims are 235 artists in their entire underground folder, which includes everybody from like a large period of time, like everybody in the 90s to the early 2000s. So it includes everybody from Adil Umar to a band called Oj, which is different from current Oj.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it's like early Oj. Clearly, because Oj was not around when ParkMusic.net was around. So I'm assuming that they are different. To a band called H2O, to an artist called to Irtash. Like I feel like these are all like very different bands playing at slightly different times. And their mainstream archive had 289. So their total list of people, like there was an early 2000s website
about 500
that has a total list of 500.
Yeah.
And I am tracking 300 performing at this present moment that are active. So it feels to me like this is pretty good, if not the best. Quality music is quite high because most of these underground things are like really bad recordings, like janky recordings off of TV or whatever. These are not like songs that you would put on Spotify. Whereas all of the 300 that we are tracking right now are songs that you would put on something
they
like
are
Spotify.
On Spotify.
So it feels like, right.
Yeah.
So it feels like, except for a few people that are now only on TikTok, which is a whole different genre.
We talked about it last
TikTok
time.
rappers.
Yes.
So, but that I feel like, at least in my database, is still a minority. So for me, it feels like it's a really interesting time to be in. And just like the number of plays people are getting online, like that's crazy. Maybe concerts wise, like if you look at videos of some of like the old big concerts, they are huge. And we don't have that level of gig happening as frequently, maybe, but this is also kind of like anecdotal. I think we would have to go in and like make a strong argument whether or not this is the case. But for me, this is a good reason to believe that it's a good place to be. Secondly, I think that the types of music that are being made, like the variety of music, is quite high now than it used to be. Like there's all the way from classical, all the way from Qawwali, Coke Studio obviously exists as the behemoth, all this branded music. Then this like crazy hip hop scene that is not part of any of the mainstream stuff. Then the whole rock scene continues, not as heavily as it did in the early 2000s, but it's still there and develops. And then there's all this like, there's two genres that I like to call alap pop and alap rock, which is basically singers in front of Western bands, which is a whole like Sajjad Ali is like an alap pop person, right? Like Shumaila also in a sense is like kind of alap pop. So for me, there's so much going on that it feels like it's a good place to be.
In terms of
Would you agree?
active current output, if we were to define like a KPI for this, active current output, Jana, in those terms, it does seem like this is the most.
I feel like we have just re-emphasized our big corporate roots and completely again killed our legitimacy with the musician biradri that we are so decidedly trying to court. Which is, first we said don't release albums, you are making our job hard. Then we said what are your KPIs? October podcast cancelled.
Or gone public. Who knows?
One or the other.
But to summarize, like Iqbal is like, it's a journey. It's a heavy, serious #TW journey, but a worthwhile effort. I don't think I've heard something like this in Pakistani music.
Okay, the one song I can remember that is like this is a song called Main Aur Shida by Young Desi. Okay,
no, I haven't heard that.
Amazing.
Okay.
And in fact, that was a song where I think there's a video for it. Now, if I remember correctly, the video I enjoyed the song without the video much more because you have to actually figure out what's happening by reading the lyrics. And it is, a lot happens.
Wow.
So Main Aur Shida also is a good throwback.
Okay.
I would recommend listening to.
And then we have some other songs. There is Adhooray which I just enjoyed. Adhooray was really fun. Even though I think the subject matter is sad. Who is this person? I'm not aware of them.
Adhooray is by a guy called Arsalan Hasan, who I think is from Nescafe Basement, and then has worked with
Right.
Zulfi and was also one of the producers for Cook Studio this year. Cook Studio, a number of producers working under Zulfi, so he was one of them. I think he worked on Kanayare, if I'm not
Oh,
wrong.
very good. Okay.
Yeah, so he's been in the scene for a while. I think his solo music is not as widely known. He has like a few really good songs. This one I feel like is probably one of the one that stands out to me.
Yeah.
The easiest classification is that it's in this sort of like R&B pop, Hassan Rahim
Yeah.
co-genre. Is that correct?
Yeah. The Weeknd. Yeah, it's basically The Weeknd where there's R&B sort of lyrics. There's sort of like disco, but also like Daft Punk wala disco sort of music.
Right.
It's like retro but futuristic and very current sort of vocals.
Which I think all great things. Right. And I think interesting thing to talk about is the amount of English versus Urdu in these songs, right? And this one is more English than many of the other hits that we've listened to. So I went back to Asim Azhar's Habibi, which has a few English lines, right? But it's mostly Urdu. And I think this one has like entire English stanzas almost. Like there's 2 or 3 lines in a row that are English.
There's another song in there also, the I'm a Big featuring wala song. Tahaji wala song. That also is like significant English.
Right. And I think I wonder now whether, what's a good strategy as an artist if you're doing this stuff. Like, obviously, there's one angle which is like speak what's natural, right? And that's fair. But if you were to construct it from the sense of palatable and most likely to be popular, I have a feeling that these things need to swing a little bit more Urdu and a little bit less English. And the reason I say that is I think that the English makes it more modern and more natural for a lot of people in urban settings, but maybe 50-50 is too much.
I think it's weird because we both came on the thing that there's a strategy behind this, but I was thinking, this makes sense if you're looking for a global audience, where a lot of K-pop has a lot of English lyrics in there, which America Mein everyone sings along to that part, and then supports in the Korean. So Ajay, you don't think that's what's happening here? You think they're just doing it to make
it's a good strategy? No. I mean, I wouldn't put a sort of intention behind it, like making it seem one way or another. I'm thinking about it in terms of what makes a song popular, right? What makes it catchy, what makes it popular. You should be able to hum along to it. I think like if you walk around Lahore or Karachi now, like you will hear English phrases as part of Urdu commentary pretty normally. So the fact that English phrases are so the fact that English phrases are part of pop lyrics makes total sense.
Sure.
I have a feeling that sometimes the song, depending on how the mix works, will cater more to one audience over another. And so if you're an artist and you're thinking about something that needs to become a mass hit, like if you compare this to Asim's song, Asim's song tilts way more Urdu, and it feels like that it makes sense why that song would be more popular in a in sort of urban Pakistan than elsewhere. But good point about going global. And I don't know what do you think is the last big success of Pakistan that went global that way, that whose primary audience was global compared to Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, that would be something like an Atif, or maybe now like a Hassan Rahim, maybe.
Atif is all Bollywood.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where he went international, and then diaspora. Like, I don't think Atif has a non-diaspora audience.
No.
As much.
Hassan Rahim
Hassan Rahim, do you think so? I don't know how big his global audience is non-Pakistani.
In people younger than us, like, Gen Z types, they're all keyed into Hassan Rahim, especially after this Coke Studio and then Miss Marvel as well. I think also added like a small tag onto it.
Miss Marvel is an interesting angle because I think it was a big deal for the industry. For musicians here, being featured in Miss Marvel was a big deal. I don't know what bottom line impact it has on listenership, but it's certainly like, the Eva B article, I think it was written about a lot. Like there were many articles, I think, about Eva B when in the first episode. So it's definitely a big deal. I would like to see some international breakout hits. Like if I think about what are the kind of breakout international hits, Arooj Aftab is the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah.
All Urdu.
But,
like almost knowing, right?
Yeah, we should do an Arooj
Ali
Aftab
Sethi
episode.
maybe.
Ali Sethi show, Pasudi. Yeah.
But Ali Sethi also, even before Pasudi, had a much bigger international audience.
Acha,
He
okay.
played to it. I think being based in New York helps.
He is based in the
but he has a
US.
big Indian audience. He works with a lot of non-Pakistan musicians.
Acha.
Zeeb Bangash has a sort of band in New York, like a jazz band. I think so. She has like a non-Pakistani global audience, but they sing again, not in
That
English.
tracks. Okay.
So I'm wondering which of these pop folks has the biggest kind of international audience. I'm not quite sure. Actually, I would have to sort of go listen. In India side.
Yeah. Because in international may I would have assumed they were just talking about India, and I wouldn't expect a bigger audience outside of that. But because for the same reason that I don't think there are many who have an audience that is outside of Pakistan and yet not India and not just basically diaspora who are not Bollywood focused.
You know what's really interesting to me is all of these Indian reaction videos to Pakistani songs have basically like the Rekha dictionary open while they are listening to the song. And they're like, "Is Urdu lafz ka kya matlab hai? Is Urdu lafz ka kya matlab hai?" And I find that so interesting. Isn't it great? It's like dictionaries that are cool again.
Yeah, and it's also cool turned into, as they were cool and then it dropped off, but now they're back.
I feel like this episode is not going to be good for my PR.
It's also turned into, because of YouTube, because these reactions were so popular, it turned into, especially for Indian people who weren't as familiar with it, turned into a engagement tactic. Okay, write in the comments what this word means, and then everybody's commenting, because every Pakistani is on this constant mission on the internet to prove that Pakistan is not a bad place, and as part of that everyone is explaining actually Faris Shafi, Mesh Shafi, their siblings. Every video, multiple people explaining this word means this word means that, etc. Just full mission focused. But yeah, I did see that. Just before that, if Arsalan was as big as Asim Asar, right, in terms of existing fame,
then I would be wrong.
No, I mean, and then this song came out, and then this song Adhooray came out. Do you think it would be not as popular as Habibi just because of the English accessibility thing?
Maybe not. That's an interesting point, right? Like, depending on where you start, does it make you more or less likely to be able to publish a style? And I think actually that really matters. Where I don't think it would be a hurdle at that point. Because then you are actually becoming so much of an influence that I feel like you have so strong of a fan following that I don't think you lose popularity as quickly, because it's a good song. Because I feel at that point it's language for me is a question of approachability, of like barrier to entry. It is not a question of stickiness. Right? The music is what keeps you sticking, because that's what you hum. The language kind of helps you figure out what it's about, or like kind of attaches you to the song. But over time, the words are less what attach you together. And I feel like if you have a good audience, then you've kind of broken that barrier to entry already. It's like, people listening to BTS in Korean, like you don't need to understand it to be into it.
Exactly.
As much.
Yeah. Acha. Let's do some quick run-throughs. Khatt, Aqdas is a new name for me. And also her voice reminded me very much of Natasha Ejaz. A very unique sort of voice. Natasha's is, I think, still higher, but she has that, like bird voice kind of zone in her singing. How'd you come across her? It's a nice song, Khatt.
Yeah, I've been tracking her for a while. She had I think a song last year that was on one of my playlists, so I've been following her since. So it sort of made it through. I hesitate to give her or assign a style to her, but it's it's almost acoustic, or sort of, I don't know if lo-fi is the right term, but
it is quite acoustic. Yeah.
And her voice is very peculiar, as you said. So it has like a peculiar range, sort of higher than normal, but she also sings like very mellow. So she's not trying to belt. So you have to kind of almost like lean in to listen to it. And it's a sort of very warm melody, very close to Natasha Ejaz. I think it's an interesting comparison. Stylistically, they're sort of similar. So it's just nice. I think it's one of those songs that not many people have heard. She's very new, very young. So it's just nice to see new artists come up with
lots of people putting out music Those are people putting on music आजकल के ज़माने में, and then those who eventually end up on playlists like yours being the only one really that I follow, but they're all quite young. They're all like late
Yeah.
teens, early 20s. I don't even know if mid 20s is common for many. Like after Aqdas, you're saying is quite young. Amna Riaz is definitely very young, and Amna Riaz is has a following. She has like a proper fan base. People like Hashim Ali regularly reference Amna Riaz, and her music is very sad. I don't know if it's all the songs are very sad, but they sound very sad to me. One day I've been telling tangentially threatening Amna Riaz that she'll be on the podcast. I've never said this to her, but I've said this to Zeerak. So now I'm saying it here. Maybe it'll get.
It's
yeah.
That's the way to get guests on, which is to tell me.
Yeah.
And then I will tell you what episode of the Roundup we're on, and then we'll hopefully make it work.
But she's also quite young, and Ghaayab, her song here is a very Amna Riaz song. Like she has a vibe, a specific vibe.
Yeah. All of these people are young. They have very distinctive styles.
Yeah.
That seem very settled already.
Yeah.
Why are there so many young people on these playlists? I think in part it's reflective of the country.
Of course.
The country itself is very young, so the fact that we are overrepresenting young people makes sense. I think what you mentioned earlier, that the scene is very democratized now. There are very fewer gatekeepers, so I think more people with less experience are breaking through. You see this in big corporations always, is that young people at some point stop breaking through because there are so many barriers, and people start reinforcing the journeys they went through as gates for new people to come in. That's not true here. So many people in their mid-20s, early 20s have broken through, which leaves the door open for everybody else. I don't think everybody's trying to make it big super quickly, right? Like,
no.
Some of these songs here are not meant to be like pop hits, which is great. And if they want to make pop hits later, like if any of these young artists was like, okay, now we're going to make like bangers, go for it. Like Umair, who produces for the Youngsters, he's, I think, probably like 20 or less. He is producing bangers. Like, good for him. Abdullah Siddiqui is like still young. I mean, we think of him as a veteran of the industry, but still
is he
young.
20? Is he 20-ish?
I think so.
I
think the problem with young folks also is that they're like one interview when they were 19, but then we don't let them age at all. So then we're like, आप तो 19 साल के थे 4 साल पहले, अब 23 के कैसे हो गए? So but still, like, mid-20s, anything less than 30 is like still young for artists.
Also,
like many artists don't find their voice still.
Also, I'm thinking that does this mean that everybody who's our age who wanted to make music is just now in a job and never got the chance, and now the only people who have time are people who aren't sucked into jobs at the moment? A very depressing thought. Perhaps
it's true, I think.
Yeah.
Perhaps personal. I'm loving your qualifiers today. Borderline crazy, perhaps personal. Adding a little level of journalistic integrity to your claims. No, I think that's true. I think young people who are trying this for the first time and are growing up in a social media driven generation and think of this as a legitimate career that is worth trying, that you could actually figure it out, and they're young enough to be able to take that risk. So somebody in their mid-30s will not quit their job and start this risk now, had they not been going all this time. And 15 years and 10, 5-7 years ago when YouTube was banned, this was not possible. So in a way, that generation lost out on a lot that this generation is not. So good for them.
And we're not resentful at all. Kaifi Khalil, he's doing a lot. I don't know if that's why he's reflected here as much, or if these are older songs that you're now coming on to.
Both.
Yeah, but Kaifi Khalil is now, like, I didn't know him at all before Coke Studio.
Before Coke, I didn't follow him really that much either. But people wrote into me to be like, "Why aren't you listening to his music? It's so sweet." Right. People knew about him. I think it's interesting how big Coke will make your listenership, right? I think Kaifi's one song that is like over 1 million plays was released after Coke. And the other ones were, maybe orders of magnitude lower. So Coke Studio is still a big deal for artists for that reason, is that even if the bump in your listenership is temporary after that, it gives you a real bump in listenership, a real like set of eyeballs that are new. So it makes sense why Coke Studio is such a big deal. Kaifi Khalil is doing a lot. He's writing really good melodies. The thing I
He
like
is.
about him is that
Yeah.
the melodies are really sweet. You start humming them immediately. I don't need to know the language, but like the chorus is sweet. It's just like you start getting into it, and it's very much very local. Yeah, like you would hear. I don't think of these melodies as being confused for the weekend.
Right,
Like
right,
most
right,
of the
right.
kind of
No, no.
Western pop melodies could be totally Western pop. They just happen to not be. But this one, I don't think could be Western pop.
Yeah.
It is very much here, and then to the point where the language doesn't matter. Like here,
Yeah.
language is not a barrier because the melody brings you in. It's interesting. The one song that I put in there a little bit late is Kahani Suno 2.0, which I
Yeah.
think is interesting. So this song made it to one of my older, like my Tazamal playlist. Tazamal is the place which is like all the new music, and then I start archiving the best songs. So this was on there a little while ago, and then I never shortlisted it for the playlist every month. I think I just like maybe I was humming it that often, or there was like other music, so it kind of lost track. But then it became really big, and I saw it like everywhere. Lots of people are listening to it. And it's just a great melody and a great song. It's interesting to me that it's a 2.0 because he did have a 1.0 prior. And so you can listen to it on Spotify. It's just a raw version of this song. Like I think perhaps less well produced, just raw. And I think what Kaifi is doing is there's a lot of like raw music out there. And maybe like some of these songs he takes to like a production team. He had a few songs with this label called Dark Street, which is a YouTube channel where a lot of Baloch music is put out. So they work with tons of like Baloch vocalists, like rappers and vocalists, and they put it out. So I find Dark Street really interesting because it's its own this little world. And so it's an interesting way to think about a total different genre of song making. Right? It's not I made one song and I'm done with it. Like it's good to go. He sort of has a sketch of a song that he put out on Spotify, and then he redid it, and the new one is so great that everybody listens to it. And then there's an older demo, is sort of there. It's fine.
Do you think the decision to redo it could this be like a market testing sort of thing where you put out a bunch of songs that you're working on, and because there still might be an investment component involved with doing it properly, quote unquote. So you're like, right, whichever one is doing the best, we'll go with that. Like, would
that sounds really plausible.
Yeah,
I have a feeling that this is just given like the amount of work that's been put out already by him and other artists. I feel like it's just let's put out whatever we can. Let's keep putting it out. But there's not that many rules to it, right? Like there's we put out the song, we can't redo it.
Sure.
Like we have to put out an album. Like there's less rigidity to it because it's not tied in the sort of Western mold, iTunes mold, Spotify mold of like a track is only released once. And I find this very empowering because if you think about the idea of a song on iTunes, like iTunes for the music industry said, okay, we broke down albums into songs. Each song can only be bought once. Can you really buy like a Qawwali? Like, should you have bought one recording of a Qawwali ever?
Yeah.
Who does that song belong to? Can you copyright that song? When in fact, what you are buying is a rendition, right? Like, so if you were to buy a Qawwali, should you get all renditions of it?
Yeah.
Should you get like, if you buy from an artist, should you get the 5 minutes? Should you get the 30 minutes? Like, I feel like everything that we do in terms of creative process has been bent into the iTunes mold when it could have been the other way around. Like, if you imagine alternate history of technology where the Qawwali singers and these Balochi singers put out their streaming platforms, would it look like the one this 2.0 be separate than that like 1.0? Would the song actually change? Like if you had it in your library, would you then shift to the new one? Would it be a different rendition? Every time you listen to the song, would you listen to the same rendition over and over? I don't think so. Like I don't think you want to, like if you go listen to Qawwali's live before streaming, like do you want to hear the exact feeling you had last time, or do you want to see something different? I have a feeling you want to see something different. And so, but we don't have artists that release like live versions all the time or different renditions of the same song with never having one canonical rendition.
There is
it feels like
actually it's a very unusual sort of, is allegory the right word? But there's an analog to this experience. The Dave Matthews Band has a cover of All Along the Watchtower, and there's no studio version. It's only done live. So every live show that they do, they might have this there. So the only version you'll see are from various live versions, and they change around. They have the guest musicians. So at some point there'll be some different guy doing lead guitar. There might be a different violin section or something like that. And that I think is very similar to the Qawwali situation, where depending on what the mood was at that event, who was there in the audience, where it was being done, the rendition can vary wildly. And also it will have a studio version.
Yeah. I think these are anomalies in the Western canon, but are the predominant way of doing things in the Eastern canon. Unfortunately, we that's not how it's archived, right? In terms of the way that we archive stuff in modern software, there is one canonical version and everything else is a subservient. Whereas I think the idea of a canonical version is very fluid in our musical practice. And I feel like the only sort of young people that are kind of practicing it right now are maybe like a little bit cafe and folks, and like hip hop maybe, I think, but in a sort of different way. But that's also drawing from a kind of Western genre where canonicization changed. So it's interesting for me in that way. And I feel like if we can continue, like if artists continue to be brave and bold in terms of the way they put out work, like that's, I think, in that a great thing.
Yeah. This is great. And then after all that talk about people doing new stuff and different stuff, the song I liked the most was the song that reminded me of this specific period in time, which was the 2010 to 2015 period, which is Trust Issues by Annural Khalid, who is also very young. And this song was this classic. There's a huge jet passing outside my window, it would seem. So हम जरा एक नमाज break लेते हैं उसके लिए. Yeah. So this song by Annural Khalid reminded me of my time in the UAE from 2010 to 2015. We would listen to like a lot of Imran Khan and UK Punjabi music. Some RDB music is also like this, and this is like a direct time capsule to that sort of frame of mind. And I was like, oh, maybe she's some established khiladi, but she is established, but she's very young, again, shockingly young, and has put out
very established, has a big audience, big listenership, was on Shamoon's last album. She has like 130,000 listeners on Spotify, right? And like that number goes up and down. So I think with like a few big songs, it'll be pretty up. Her Instagram following is I think also huge.
Something.
So like she's a big artist. Like, she's not, but she's built that following social media wise. Like I don't think it's like it's not a one big song and suddenly she's like not a one hit thing. Right. It's a consistent following building, not through canonical versions of songs, but she releases a lot of like covers and she like singing a lot. And so she was on some Shamoon's album. My favorite song of hers is from this compilation album by a collective called Miracle Mangal. They're sort of electronic music collective, and so she has this song with aforementioned Umair, Stunner's producer, and it's this like almost like dance song with like a early 2000s like vocal melody on top. It's called Fasle. Really good. I think it's one of her like more popular songs. And so she has a great versatility as an artist. So really it just feels like she will just continue putting out songs and being great at it. So
another
just
potential
a good person to follow.
Yeah, another potential target for the podcast. Again, I've told Zeerak, and now that's
it's happening.
Yeah, we've decided this is the way.
Just know that my history in corporate life, it was known to be that if I was put on a project, the project would die because I would actively try to kill it. So for you, this does not bode well. But I hope you have better luck.
This is the last episode of the podcast. Somehow YouTube will die or something. But acha. I think we must make mention of our nepotism favorite, which is Bojh, with Nadir Shehzad featuring Natasha Noorani. Natasha Noorani, you happen to be married to. Nadir Shehzad, I happen to be married to. It's
so no vested interest whatsoever. Like if there's two conflicts, they cancel out, right?
Yes. Scientifically,
we are now neutral. Scientifically, we are now neutral.
Yeah. And it's always with Nadir songs. Natasha is now her past few appearances in media have been very, refined, and there's a big artistic element to stuff she's doing and stuff like that.
And you're saying now she's doing a song with Nadir.
And with Nadir, You never know what's going to happen. So Nadir's previous music video.
I love Nadir.
Yeah, his previous music video, we have our chaotic WhatsApp group, and sometimes, we just get like, it's always like he asks us advice, and our reaction should be, why are you asking us? We're idiots. But our reaction is always strong opinions, as if we deserve to be consulted. But yeah, his previous thing was like, eyes in TVs and ruins and whatnot. And now it's
crazy animation work. Like really hi-fi animation work. Not jokey, low-key stuff.
No, and suddenly him and Natasha are having a dance battle in some field. I don't know. There was grass. So you never know what's going to happen. But the song is great. What is that? The plane has landed. Can you hear it?
You are in the middle of an apocalypse while talking about Nadir's songs.
Yeah.
Yes. Adds up. No, it's really fun. Like, yeah, sure. We are definitely biased in this case, but I don't mind.
Of course.
It's a fun song to listen to, and a much funner song to watch, because if you know these people in person, I think it makes it especially that much more interesting.
Yeah.
And they're having a bunch of fun together while singing a fun song, and it's just, I think if you need a pick me up, it's worth going to this.
I really appreciate how Natasha is way dorkier in person than her musician image, which I was fully intimidated by, and I was like, oh, ye to bahut serious, matlab she's going to be like a hi-fi artist. And then I made her do the TPR 10 thing a long while ago, and I think she did the intro like 15 times just because her name was a huge challenge for her to say, hi, this is Natasha. We're on the same level.
She enjoys lifting other people much more than she likes talking about herself. So I think it's, again, adds up, but you can see that, I think, like for both of them, like 100%. You can see the sort of generosity of their friendship in them playing music together. So yeah, it's just fun. So
I think definitely it's on there. Hard push to go watch the video. Any other Shumaila we've done, blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. All right, any last words, any closing words?
This is the closing words are, this is the most songs we have ever talked about on any playlist, so we are either getting better or getting worse. please send feedback.
All right, thank you. Send feedback, money, everything, and if you have any criticism, we will not listen to it. Thank you very much.
Email it to me.